So, another one of those double stop studies, which are great by Kreutzer. This number 33 explores one of those most difficult double stops, which is the thirds. And you're probably used to playing them as in scales. And certainly we have some scales in here, but it's so much nicer to have it as a tune, because then we can involve many more things like phrasing, direction, vibrato, and thinking of it like all the other studies by Kreutzer in this case, as two different melodies singing together. So it's not just double stops, but actually two different voices. There are two voices playing together. So the big challenge here is to make it sound like it's two different violins playing together. Which I hope sounded like when I played it all the way through. And also to do all the phrasing and to do it super legato between different combination of fingers, different combination of string crossings, and the balance of the bow in the different strings. So, how do we start working on this piece? If this is your first time, obviously we're gonna go from the left hand perspective first, and making sure we have a nice sound while we do this. Not too loud. Remember, when we're doing double stops, we don't need to press any harder. We need to make sure that the bow is balanced on both strings equally. First bar is already quite tricky, especially because of this last. That's one of those stretches that seem easy, but actually in first position is quite a big gap between the second finger and the fourth finger. So I would definitely practice that separately first. And then there's an extra stretch, if you can do it. So the first 5 bars are basically just working on that little bit of stretch and going back to those thirds. Now if you cannot do it, an alternative would be either 2-4 or 1-3. But I would definitely recommend you to not to shift to third position. So I would do 4-2, 3-1, and then 3-1 again. Back to second position. So if you cannot stretch, that's your best option, because it's going to be less of a stretch in any of the positions. But second position is slightly smaller than first position, so it will help you to get the intonation much better. There are lots of other places, obviously the same in the second line. Try as much as possible to shift on one of the beats, either first, second, third or fourth beats, and not to shift on a weak beat, because then you can really hear the shift, and we want to avoid hearing the shift. Like I said before, it needs to sound like a melody, not like a set of double stops that we're shifting from one to other. Apart from that beginning, when we go to, let's say, the fourth line, we have that. Etc. Etc. So that's a combination between different double stops, 6, octave, diminished fifth, third, and again. This is a note diminished. So I would definitely go one by one, and then the relationship between one and the next, as always, moving smoothly from one to the other is definitely one of the tricky things and challenges in this piece and in any double stop piece. One thing I forgot to mention, at the end of the first line we have that fifth. So we want to prepare the third finger on both strings now. So we don't have to move the finger, not... That's gonna be out of tune, so... You got a lot more chances to get it in tune if you get it in tune before you play the last third. It's much easier. Other sections that might be a little bit tricky later on, we got all those scales. So there's loads of those, and then later on again another combination. And then more scales. And then at the very end, I found this particularly tricky. Now, the last 3 bars, or 4 bars. If you can reach third position with a harmonic on the A, that bit I would definitely practice quite a few times to get it completely right every time. Also because at the end of the piece we tend to forget it exists. So, in a nutshell, practice first all the different combinations of fingers with a nice soft sound. Once we got this, is working on the legato and working on a smooth transition between the fingers and between the strings. And finally, putting some music into it and make it sound like 2 melodies instead of just a set of double stops. Because that's when the magic of this study comes. Because it's gonna make it much more important to play everything in tune, because there is a meaning behind all those notes. Otherwise they just become meaningless notes and hard. So we wanna make sure that we do it for a reason and we play from our heart.